Over to you, Councillor Rodahan. You're welcome to start.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome everyone to this remote meeting of Eastbourne Borough Council's Licensing Committee. I am Councillor Pat Rodahan, Chair of this committee. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the government regulations. For those watching on live stream, please bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. I will now take agenda items 1, 2, and 3 together. Introductions, apologies for absence, and declaration of interest. I will invite councillors to introduce themselves by calling out the names. And can you also advise us if you need to declare an interest on any item on the agenda? Before I do so, I confirm that we have apologies from Councillor Sami Chowdhury and Councillor Murdoch. So I myself don't have an interest on any item on the agenda. Vice Chair Councillor Maxted, can you introduce yourself and do you have an interest?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Councillor Robin Maxted, Deputy Chair, Licensing Committee. I have no interest to declare on any item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belsey. Sound.
Councillor Colin Belsey, Ratton, I have no interest to declare either, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor De Cara.
Councillor Penny De Cara, as Sovereign, I have nothing to declare. Thank you.
Councillor Diplock.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Peter Diplock from Old Town. I have no interests to declare. Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Amanda Morris from Old Town. I have nothing to declare.
Councillor Murray.
Good evening, everyone. Councillor Murray, no declarations of any interest.
Thank you. Councillor Swansborough.
Councillor Colin Swansborough from Hampden Park, and I have no declarable matters either.
Councillor Taylor.
It's Councillor Barry Taylor Meads, and I have no interest to declare.
Councillor Vaughan.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Candy Vaughan from Langley, and I have no declarations to declare.
Thank you, everyone. So we have no one declaring an interest of any kind. I will ask officers presenting reports or providing advice to members to introduce themselves before speaking later in the meeting. I think you've all done so, but can I ask everyone to mute their microphones when they're not speaking? And if you have connectivity issues, you may find it helpful to turn off your camera. If anyone wishes to speak, please use the hand icon in Teams and indicate that to me. Item 4, minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 6th of January 2020. Do you wish me to sign that as a correct record, councillors?
Agreed.
I assume it's agreed. Minutes approved. Agenda item 5, written questions by members of the public and on matters not included on the agenda. None has been received. Agenda item 6, urgent items. There are no urgent items. Agenda item 7, right to address the meeting on items listed on the agenda from members of the public or from a councillor. None have been received. Agenda item 8, amendments to Hackney carriage and private hire licensing guidance as a result of the Department of Transport statutory guidance, pages 9 to 130. I invite Paul Thornton, Specialist Advisor Licensing, to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening to you. Good evening to all members of the committee and anybody else who's listening in or watching this meeting. My name is Paul Thornton. I'm one of the specialist advisors for licensing for Eastbourne Borough Council. Mr. Chairman, one should never start a meeting off with an apology, but I intend to this evening. Regrettably, there's a typo in on page 9 of the report, and it's under Officer Recommendations. Paragraph 1, it says the committee review the proposed Lewes District Council. That should, of course, read Eastbourne, and I apologise, that's my typo. Mr. Chairman, whilst we're making apologies, I may as well get the second one out of the way. Members will obviously have read the revised guidance, and at Appendix 7 there is a thing called the penalty points scheme, which is brand new to the guidance. In my report at paragraph 2, where it says changes to the guidance, again, my typo, and I do apologise, I haven't summarised the nature of that scheme, and as it is an amendment to the scheme and quite a significant one, I must apologise. What I will do when I introduce my report, I will just give a very brief statement about that. So that's Appendix 7, penalty point scheme from the actual guidance, and that's on pages 86 to 90 of the report. Mr. Chairman, some of your members may have received an email from an Eastbourne private hire operator relating to this evening's meeting, and in it detailing some concerns about this process. Can I assure you that those concerns are being met by this meeting, insofar as you will be asked to comment and decide upon what matters in my report are going to be sent, if any, to public consultation. So please be assured that those concerns in that email are being dealt with by the very nature that this will go to a public consultation, and that message has been is being conveyed back to the author of the email. Mr. Chairman, on to my report. This meeting of your committee has come about as a result of the Department for Transport issuing statutory guidance for the taxi and private hire industry. And as you've no doubt read in that report, this has come about as a result of both the J and the Casey reports, which reported some years ago, and it concerns some alarming issues in Rotherham and Rochdale and other parts of the country regarding safeguarding issues and child abuse issues. So the Department for Transport have issued this guidance, and we as officers have taken the opportunity to revise the long-standing taxi and private hire guidance that your committee worked to for this trade. Now, there's no requirement to have a guidance, as you're well aware, but good governance dictates that there should be. It provides a reference for yourselves when making decisions, when matters are referred to you, and also for officers when they are making decisions around issues that arise within the taxi and private hire trade. Now, as I've previously mentioned, you'll see there's a number of matters which are changes to the guidance in paragraph 2, 33 in all, ranging from paragraph A to paragraph, it will be GG with the inclusion of the penalty points scheme, which I said I'd earlier omitted. What I intend to do is, some of them are minor changes, such as some wording. Some are slightly more prominent. So I think what I intend to do is just to highlight the prominent ones, because shortly we will be going through them in some detail, where you will be asked, as I understand, to decide whether you approve these for public consultation. In no particular order, the first prominent issue is the installation of CCTV, and I've explained that in paragraph G. The council are looking at a code of practice for CCTV. One of the issues that it will bring up is that it will mean the council will be required to be the data controller for any data that is collected. And you will see that the public consultation will seek views. Vehicles are required to have a council-approved system to be installed by October 2022. That's certainly the proposal this evening. The second one is what's called a fit and proper test. Those of you that have made determinations in this matter will be familiar with the term fit and proper. And everybody in taxi and private hire licensing is aware of it. However, it's never actually been formally identified in law or defined. However, in this government document, they have put their mark on it, and we are intending that mark be used for your determinations. Right, DBS checks, formerly called Criminal Records Bureau checks. All drivers and private hire operators are now going to will be required to subscribe to the update service, which is an electronic service, which prevents drivers having to apply for a paper record, which is more expensive, and particularly in light of the fact that currently they required a new DBS every 3 years. The suggested timescale in the new guidance is every 6 months. So that again, that's quite a departure and quite a significant change. At paragraph Q, there's an introduction of an English language proficiency test for all new applicants. This is a computer-based test of understanding of the English language. The test will be supervised on a face-to-face basis by a council officer. It's a simple process where an applicant will be asked to speak in relation to some questions and asked to explain a scenario. Now, all applicants, regardless of nationality, will have to sit this test. The only exceptions will be those who have a relevant qualification in English, and those qualifications are outlined in the actual guidance itself. Safeguarding and disability awareness training. These two issues probably speak to the whole of the origins of the reports and origins of this guidance, actually. So it will be mandatory training for all new applicants and for all current drivers, holders of licenses. All of them will be required to undergo this training. There will be we're looking for a fixed term period when all the current drivers are trained, and certainly for the new applicants, if it's not possible for them to be trained before issuing the license, there will be a fixed time period once the license is issued for them to complete that training. And the sanction will be that if they haven't completed that training, then the license will be suspended until such time as they do so. So that's that's the safeguarding and the disability awareness training. You will see in the large bundle of documents that you've got, there's a convictions policy, which is quite a lengthy convictions policy. This policy is widely used in a number of other licensing districts, and this replaces the current arrangements in your current policy. And we view this as a more robust and comprehensive arrangements, and in our view, it gives a far clearer guidance both to officers and to you as committee members when having to determine matters. There's a common law police disclosure and referrals to the police. We will maintain close links with the police and already have put arrangements in place. The police have nominated one of their current licensing officers to be the taxi licensing officer or guidance officer as well, and we have a meeting arranged with him within the next 3 weeks. Also included in that discussion will be a representative from East Sussex County Council, who are responsible for, as many of you will know, the arrangements for home to school runs. A lot of these home to school runs organised by through the social services, so we see that as a very, very positive step for information sharing with those two agencies. Members, I must apologise again for omitting the paragraph about the penalty points scheme. The penalty points scheme allocates points to a driver or operator for breaches of rules or conditions, and you will see there are some I think 60 examples of this in Appendix 7. The object is actually to improve the level of compliance and to improve standards, so that if somebody does get points, then it will be a period of reflection to them once it is intended that if a driver reaches 12 points, then they will automatically be appearing before you as a committee for determination regarding their licence as to whether they are fit and proper to remain in possession of that licence. It's intended that the points will remain active, and then at the end of that 12 months, they'll be considered to be spent, and for want of a better phrase, the slate is wiped clean. I must stress that the scheme doesn't prevent the council from taking any action it's entitled to under legislation, bylaws and regulations, and that would include consideration for prosecution, immediate suspension or immediate revocation in very serious cases. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Committee, that's the changes or proposed changes to the guidance. The financial impact, there are some matters in there you'll immediately be aware of. The CC installation, we estimate that to be in a region of about £500 for a cost of that. The English language test, I've quoted £53 in the report. That may actually be a slight overestimation. We think it may now be in the region between 40 and 53. The safeguarding and disability awareness training, that's estimated to be in the region of £25 for each course. And that training we anticipate being a one-off. We don't anticipate that being having to be reviewed over a period of time. And both the safeguarding and disability awareness training and the English language tests, these will be provided by external groups, external operators. And as I mentioned with the DBS, the drivers will be invited to sign up to the update service, the online update service. The cost of £13 a year. They can do that now. In fact, a lot actually do that now. If they were to do a DBS every year, currently they're looking at £71. And bearing in mind we're now looking at these checks being done every 6 months. What it will also do is ensure that the applications can be dealt with far quicker by doing them online. In relation to legal implications, I've already mentioned there's no statutory requirement for the council to adopt any guidance. However, good governance dictates that that it is. And it's considered best practice as it informs, guides you as decision makers. And if the council were to be challenged in any way in a court of law about any decisions it makes, if it points to a document, a policy, a guidance that it has agreed, it carries far more weight to back up your decision making than if there were no guidance at all. Inequalities impact analysis has been undertaken. An overall positive impact is expected for disabled people and their carers, and anyone who may be vulnerable because of their age, mental or physical health condition, which, as I alluded to earlier on, is one of the underpinning factors of this report, the DFT report that's brought this about. And if during the consultation submissions are pertinent to equalities, they'll be included in the subsequent analysis in any subsequent committee report. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that's my report.
Thank you, Paul. I'm now going to ask members if to have any, I will quote it as general questions of Paul. I phrase it that way because we are hopefully in a few minutes going to go back and Paul will lead us through each of the items individually. And we will decide on each individual item whether or not we want it to be part of a consultation. And I emphasize what we're looking at is a consultation document. It's not one which is decisive or coming into being as a result of us today. It's just whether we want each of the items listed to go out to consultation. So does anybody have, I see 2 hands up. I'm not sure who is up first, just 3 now. But in all of the list I'm looking at, can I ask Councillor Vaughan to ask whatever question she has?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm just a bit worried in this where we find ourselves at the moment, that £500 is probably going to be a lot of money to be able to put CCTV into their cabs. Is there any way that we will be able to perhaps join with other councils and do an en masse bid to buy a lot of these cameras so that we can pass the savings down to the drivers?
Councillor, sorry, Paul Thornton speaking again. Councillor, you make a very good point, and clearly in the current times that we're in, there are a lot of businesses suffering, and not least, the taxi and private hire trade. Generally, there are companies around, and there is one or a couple locally who will actually put the equipment into the vehicles, and then they will actually, if they break down, they will service. So it'll be a contract that's entered into between the drivers and that company. So the council won't actually be buying the CCTV equipment. That will be a matter between. Obviously, there will be preferred operators who we will not direct, but we will advise drivers that these companies are basically vetted by us. As to the cost coming down, I don't. I'm going to stick my neck out and probably say that I don't think so. It will bring it down significantly from that figure, but we can make some inquiries. But each council is different, and each council may well have different providers, depending, of course, on the distance for drivers to drive it and get this equipment in. Should you so agree?
Councillor De Cara, the other hand has come down, I think. Councillor Diplock. So Councillor De Cara.
Yeah, it was just an observation, really. Something that strikes me is that there's no message on climate change in there. I would have thought that it was the perfect opportunity for the council to, have some kind of influence in this respect.
Do you want to answer it, Paul, or would you like me to?
Mr. Chairman, would you like? I understand what you're saying, Councillor. This is a guidance, a taxi and private hire guidance document in relation to how we determine disciplinary issues, how we determine the safety of our fleet for the public. Unless I'm guided otherwise, I'm not sure that what we could put in here that would adequately address those concerns at this stage.
And secondly, there are restraints in law of indicating to the licensed trade that they must come green. And secondly, if there weren't, it wouldn't be a good time to pick that matter up, which was expressed a moment ago on a different issue. Councillor Murray, I see your hand up again.
Sorry for the speaker. Yeah, I was just going to mention about the eco stats for the taxis. I think, as Officer Thornton has said, that this meeting's about something else at the moment. We'd quite like to have that conversation with the taxi drivers going forward, but at the moment we're going to sort of let them recover from COVID first before we sort of go, before we discuss anything to do with the eco credibilities of the taxi fleet, shall I say.
Councillor Belsey, followed by Councillor Taylor. And have you put your hand up again, Councillor? It's coming down again. Councillor Murray, it's down. So it's Councillor Belsey, followed by Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Following up from what Councillor Vaughan said, I think there's one or two things in here that put implications on the taxi drivers or the taxi companies, whoever's going to pay with regard to finances, which worries me a bit, especially in the current climate, because, you know, I was at the station a couple of days ago and, well, not at the station, I wasn't going to the station, but I was down that way. And, there was only like 5 taxis bothering to be in the station rank, which is usually there's 9 in there or whatever the number is, and they're all up Old Orchard Road and they're not on the road. And I think you'll find perhaps our licensing officers can tell us, but I think quite a few people have actually rescinded their licenses, if that could be confirmed or not, purely because of the numbers that are out there and they're just not making a living out of it anymore at the moment. I'm a little bit surprised at the response to Councillor Takara's question with regarding the green situation, because I thought our current council was very much going to be a total green Eastbourne by 2030. It's 2021 now, boys. There's nine years to go. But I appreciate what Councillor Murray's just said, but to have nothing in here about it is rather odd, even if it was just something that we would go towards. There are things about vehicles that we've done before. We've done colours. We've done rear opening larger vehicles. We've done larger vehicles. We've done all sorts of things with regard to vehicles. So I find it a bit strange that all of a sudden we don't want to get involved with it. But perhaps that is for another day. I don't deny that. It's not necessarily for today, but it's something that could have been written into the report. My other point that I will come straight to at this moment, I think that the time that this has come out, and I gather from the letter that came from 720 taxis, that the time they've had to even look at it and respond hasn't been that long. So I personally would like to think that if we do consultation, which we need to, obviously, it would need to be a longer consultation period than the one that's in the document. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I see that one of our officers, Danielle Ball, has their hand indicating she wants to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Licensing Officer Danielle Ball. Just in response to a couple of counts. Can you not hear?
That's better.
That's better.
Is that better? Just in response to a couple of questions raised by Councillor Belsey, just to confirm that we have had a few driver's licences back since the start of COVID, but not actually as many as we thought we might. It appears that they're just not working at this current time. I don't know if they're doing something different, but we haven't had many licences actually back to us. And the second point was just in relation to operators or the taxi trade as a whole having seen sight of this documentation. A link was put up to this on our website about October time, when we had first read and digested it, and also all operators were sent a link to it back in October as well, to give them prior warning as to the issues that may be raised in time to come. So just to confirm that this did go out to operators and on our website for the trade a good probably 3 months ago.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, you next. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think the officers have done an awful lot of work to this, and I was running down the list of changes to be made, and I found them all acceptable to go out to consultation. Obviously, there is one which is on page 11D, where the vehicle door sign issued by Eastbourne Borough Council should be permanently fitted on the front of the on the door panels, and I hope that does eventually get approval, because I've seen cabs whether I don't know whether that belongs that includes private hire, but I think it looks, sometimes I've seen it even recently where they're looking very shoddy, and I think that's a good point on that. I do think that the concerns about the consultation, 6 weeks, probably it could have been 12 weeks, or does that matter? Does it matter how long the consultation goes out for? And as long as they get a good response and we get to see, bring this back to committee, because I think there'll be a lot of contentious things, so I can't see it being dealt with officers. And on the issue of the point system, the only one, there was 3 at the top on page 89, and I thought to myself, well, if a failure to carry a fire extinguisher should really still be the responsibility of the driver, or both the driver and the vehicle owner, and the failure to carry a first aid kit also should be a responsibility of the driver, same as anybody should be responsible for a bald tyre, but that's not. And I think on 24, displaying unsuitable or inappropriate cited signs and unauthorised advertisements, they again should be a responsibility of the driver as well. So I think, you know, I'd like some answers to why they don't include the driver's responsibility. But other than that, I hope, Mr. Chairman, that this goes out to consultation as it is. Little longer than 6 weeks. If I don't know what the debate may say, but I would say if you couldn't do 12 weeks, 8 weeks would be suitable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Before our officers respond, could I remind members to not get into specific details if they can right now. It's general questions, because we're going back in a minute, hopefully, and we're taking each item one by one. So is there a response to Councillor Taylor, or shall we take them later and when we take the individual item?
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond to the last points. So you're going to have to, it would appear to me, and I entirely agree with Mr. Councillor Taylor's points around 22, 23 and 24 on that penalty point scheme. I can only put that down to ticks being in the wrong place. That the fire extinguisher, first aid kit and inappropriate signs should obviously be the responsibility of the driver. And I don't know how the ticks have come out of there, but I'll make sure they're put back. And apologies to the committee for that.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Vaughan, Councillor Diplock and Councillor Maxwood. Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you, Chair. Just to let Councillor De Cara know that on page 25 of the report, the vehicle engines shall meet the following Euro standards. Diesel-powered vehicles shall meet the Euro 6 standard for emissions, and petrol vehicles the Euro 4 standard. So our vehicles at the moment should be at the recommended standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Diplock.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Peter Diplock, Old Town. I was going to ask officers a little earlier, if something isn't within this consultation document now, it doesn't preclude us adding or amending something in future after this process has taken place. That was going to be my first question to Paul Thornton. I'd also say that I'd agree with Councillor Murray that now isn't the time for any kind of major change in terms of Councillor Belsey mentioned the Borough Council's 2030 deadline. I don't think, given the year with COVID, and we're still not out of the woods yet, I don't think now is the time for a major change in that regard. But I would point to the County Council's deadline of 2050, which is some years away, so they've got plenty of time to do what they like. I'd also agree with Councillor Taylor. I think on the 6 weeks for the consultation, I think perhaps it makes more sense to allow a longer period of time for consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Maxted.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robin Maxted. Yeah, just picking up from what Councillor Vaughan was saying, on page 21 in this report, there's a paragraph entitled Environmental Considerations, and it does say the Council is committed to reducing emissions through raising awareness of environmental issues with the trade and other interested parties. And it's obviously not a comprehensive statement, but it does pay attention to the Council's commitment to reducing the levels of carbon dioxide. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor De Cara. Is your hand still up?
Yes, just say that yeah, I mean, I appreciate there's some comments here, but I think what we need to be doing is pushing the agenda on climate change further forward, and these comments don't do that.
Thank you. I now ask our advisor Paul Thornton to take us into the changes item by item, starting with 2.1a, and I will ask after each item whether members agree that it should be part of the consultation. If there is dissension, we will go to full individual vote. So thank you, Paul, if you could lead us item by item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if I can just divert slightly, just to answer one of Councillor Diplock's questions there. He said if something's not in there now, can we change? Can the guidance be changed in the future? Yes, it can. It's a living document, I think, is one of the phrases I think used, and in line if legislation comes by requiring us to look at this, then it can be changed. And equally, if your committee wants something placed in there, then equally that can be considered as well. So this does not any changes to the document now does not shut it off for the next 5 years. Councillor Diplock, that answers your question. Right, Mr. Chairman. So excuse me. So we're on 2.1a, the changes in licensing guidance. Any change in the licensing requirements will be followed by a review of the licenses already issued, which is a short way of saying that if something is implemented now, we will look at the current licenses to see whether, and the conditions, to see whether something needs to change there. One of the immediate examples of that is the safeguarding and disability awareness training, which will, if this is approved, will necessitate conditions on the driver's licenses being changed.
Are there any questions or comments, or are everybody agreed that this should be part of the consultation? Any dissenters?
Agree, Mr. Oh.
B.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. The relicensing of vehicles age restriction. You'll currently see within the report that there's you imposed an age limit on vehicles of 10 years. All this condition is doing is just rewording the current condition to make it a bit more explicit, and that is on page 21 of the report.
Are there any comments or questions, or is everybody agreed?
Agreed.
No dissenters. Agreed. Thank you. C.
C, the wheelchair accessible vehicles. You did decide that any new Hackney carriage vehicles in the borough will be granted to what we call WAVs, wheelchair accessible vehicle, and this condition has again been reworded to clarify the actual condition.
Any questions or comments?
Agreed.
No dissenters? Agreed. Thank you.
Section D, Mr. Chairman, vehicle door signs. Clarifying that currently the door signs are can be magnetised, and this is just clarifying and updating the condition that signs produced by the council must be permanently fixed to the doors, and that the signs that we produce are in fact have adhesion on them for that purpose.
Any comments? We've already had a comment in favour.
Agreed.
No dissenters?
No, I've got a question.
Can I ask
Yes, go ahead. Sorry, yes. Councillor Murray, Councillor Belsey.
We had quite a long conversation about this a few years ago about the signage. At that point, it was decided that the signage would be allowed to be magnetic, so the some of the taxi fleet would be able to use their cars for private use as well. Why are we trying to change that?
In answer to your question, Councillor, where it is a condition that the door signs are on, there are a number of instances where door signs are not displayed. In the main, the reasons given are that they've fallen, I forgot to put them on. We believe that a door sign is another matter of safety for the public, so that somebody getting into the car from the side generally wouldn't see the plate at the rear of the vehicle. The plate number will be is displayed on the side of the vehicle, and it also indicates whether the vehicle is a Hackney carriage or private hire. So that is the reason. There is also an argument, and I do agree that there is some slight disagreement within some circles that, but our view is that once the vehicle is licensed, then it's always a licensed vehicle. And if you take the rear sign, the rear plate should always be on the vehicle.
Can I
hope to explain that?
Officer Daniel Ball to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Danielle Ball, licensing specialist. I just wanted to confirm on that point that we did undertake some visits to certain location and actually got numbers of vehicles that were displaying door signs against numbers of vehicles that were not displaying door signs, and we found that actually in our opinion an unproportionate number of those vehicles were not displaying council door signs, which are a condition of their licence. By obviously having them as a potential permanent feature of the vehicle, those door signs could not be removed by the driver or by a passerby who decided to take that door sign off as a bit of a joke. So that is the reason that we are suggesting to go out to a public consultation. But obviously, just to confirm, it would be a consultation, and obviously you could then make a formalised decision on whether or not you decided to implement that condition, potentially based on the responses from that consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Belsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Murray and I were both fighting to keep what we've got at the moment on this one some years back. And why can it not be added as a penalty points thing? Because if that is the case, then surely if we made it a penalty points situation, if they weren't on there, then they'd have to be on there. Otherwise, they get penalty points against them. I mean, why can't we do it a more simple way rather than, you know, these? I'm not suggesting anybody might buy a taxi that's done 250 or 300,000 miles, but you certainly wouldn't want to buy a vehicle with holes in the door that because they've had to take the plate off to sell it or whatever. I just find it's a little bit over the top personally, and I can't see a problem with where we are at the moment. My colleague, Councillor Taylor, will not agree with me, but that's all right. We've disagreed before. But I do feel that it's sledgehammer and nuts comes to mind. That's all.
Councillor Murray.
Yeah, agree with Councillor Belsey, believe it or not. The idea of using it as penalty points as an alternative. So whilst we've got the opportunity for the consultation, have the choice of fixed on the door, or would you prefer to have it as a penalty point on your licence if you don't have the licence on there? And then at least we can get some feedback from the taxi drivers themselves as to what they would like. Because I agree, it is a very serious breach that they're not displaying their signs properly. So we do need to do something, but I would like to sort of try and keep it as flexible as possible if we can.
I'll take Councillor Taylor first, and then I will ask our officers if they want to make any more comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colin Belsey was quite right. We are at variance over this issue. I've seen taxis that are going around with a door sign that's all skew width. It's just as if, shove that on, they throw it on and it sticks. I'm worried about newer vehicles coming along that might be aluminium, where it won't stick. But this has always been a problem, and it gets worse. And I think we look at neighbouring, like Brighton and Hove, they have permanent livery on the side of their doors. And I think this, as I mentioned earlier, I think this is quite essential. No, that a cab or a licensed vehicle is a tool. It's like a plumber or an electrician. He can have magnetic door signs, but they don't. They tend to have a nice logo, put it on their working tool, which is what a hackney carriage should be. So I just hope it goes out to consultation. I know it will be controversial, but like the officer just said, I've seen them going around with no door sign on the front. So let's hope it goes. At least we'll see what happens at the consultation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I see a hand up from Joe Dunk. Come in, please.
Hi, good evening, Chair. Senior Specialist Advisor for Environmental Licensing and Environmental Protection. On the point of vehicle door signs, there is a public safety element to this, and the statutory guidance that has been circulated is about public safety. Unfortunately, the world we live in is somewhat different to that a few years ago, and it only takes one door sign to be removed and for someone else to use it in an inappropriate way to entice trade, and then the authority may well be criticised. That's just a point I would like feedback on.
Thank you. We've got a proposition in front of us, item D. Either you wish that it should be part of the consultation, or that many people are dissenting. If there is dissent, I will go to a vote. Everybody in favour then? Any dissenters?
So, what was the question again, Chairman, please?
We've got a proposition in front of us to include item D as part of the consultation, which is a door sign will be permanently fixed to the doors. That's all we got in front of us at the moment. I'm asking, is everybody in favour, or are they dissenters?
I'm a dissenter.
I'm a dissenter. I'm in favour. I'm in favour of that going in as it is, but I would also like an option to be able to have points against not having your signage up. So we have item D.1 or something.
It can't be trouble, Jimmy. Sorry, Councillor Murray. It has. I mean, you can't have it. This is saying it's permanently on the door, so it's got to be a transfer or something like that, which would not be able to be taken off at all.
Yeah.
So it's a straight.
So we can have the two items. We can have one which is a permanent fixture, or we can have one which is a magnetic sign, but you get points if you don't display it. And that's
right. Yeah.
At the moment, yeah.
D and D1.
Mr. Chairman, can I move that we put the consultation in as in the report?
Right. That's what's in front of us. We would need an amendment.
Can I just say one thing, please, Chair? What I'm thinking is that where Councillor Taylor has said that the plumber has his van with a sign on it and everything like that, he doesn't take that on holiday should he have to drive down to Cornwall or something like that with his family. So why should taxi drivers have signs stuck to their taxis and they go off down to Cornwall and somebody's trying to hail them? You know, that thinking that they're a taxi or something like that. Why can't they actually have their car for private use as well as business use? Thank you.
Can I answer that, Mr. Chairman? They can always get a blank magnetic thing to go over the top of it if they wanted to use it for private use. Yes or no?
I'm going to call in Paul Thornton before I go to Councillor Maxford.
Thank you, Chair. In answer to, I just want to raise an answer to Councillor Belsey and to Councillor Murray. For your information, just to put your minds at ease, the penalty in the penalty point scheme for failing to display an appropriate door sign, there's 6 points for it is on that already. So if people do actually transgress and have 2 of those in 12-month period, then they will come before you to be dealt with. But I thought it's just useful to point out that it is currently within the penalty point scheme, and also currently, if drivers are found not to have the door signs, they are subject to a warning letter, and 2 of those warning letters in a year will mean they will come before your committee for a decision to be made. Thank you.
Councillor Maxted.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robin Maxted. Perhaps, Chair, you could confirm that the purpose of this meeting tonight is to put a document out for public consultation, not for the licensing committee to make decisions preempting the public consultation. I mean, obviously there may be need to reword certain items in this, but could you confirm, unless I've got it wrong, is this not just we're here to confirm what goes out for public consultation rather than us actually make decisions on what we're sending out for public consultation? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The only decision that we're making tonight is on what goes out to consultation.
Yeah.
You have your hand up again, Councillor Belsey.
Yeah, if I'm getting lost now. Well, I'm not, but if, as our officer has just said, it's already in the point system, why are we looking to get rid of it from the point system? You know, we're leaving it in the point system. It's in the new point system, but we're saying we're going to make them compulsory to have permanent door markings. So you won't need the point system if they're permanent door markings. So I can't see where we're coming from on that one.
Well, it could be taken off. We've got item D in front of us, and what I'm going to do, and it's the only thing we have in front of us at this moment in time, and it is a stress going out to consultation. We're not deciding on it specifically. And I'm going to do a roll call of councillors to see who's where we are. I'm in favour of item D. Vice Chair, Councillor Maxted. I can't hear you, Councillor Maxted.
Sorry, Chair, I missed what you actually said there.
I'm the only thing in front of us is item D as it is on the sheet, and I'm going to do a roll call of and there was a vote of members' views and see where we are at the end of it. And I endorsed it. I'm going in favour of it in the roll call. You're Vice Chair. I'm asking for your view.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm in favour of it going out as it is for public consultation. Thank you.
Councillor Darcy? Can't hear you. You're muted.
I'm not in favour of it going out just as it is.
So no. Okay. Councillor Chaudhry not here. Councillor De Cara?
I think it should be included in the consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Diplock?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on the basis that this is a consultation, I'm happy for it to be included.
Councillor Morris?
Yes, I'm in favour of it being included in the consultation.
Councillor Murdoch not here. Councillor Murray?
On the basis that it's a consultation and we've already got the alternative in place, then yes, I'm happy for it to go out in consultation.
Councillor Swansborough?
For.
Councillor Taylor?
Yes, I'm very much in favour of it going out to consultation.
Councillor
Thank you.
Vaughan?
Yes, it does need to go out to consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very much in favour, so it remains. Can you lead us on item E, Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item E, insurance write-offs, and the authority will not license any vehicle which has previously been recorded as a write-off. And it's just a bit of an update on the current wording, Mr. Chairman.
Any comments, questions, or is everybody in favour? I assume that is carried.
Agree, yeah.
Thank you. Item H.
F is the intended work area. This relates purely to hackney carriages. Drivers will be asked what area they intend to work in predominantly. If the answer is outside of this district, they will not be granted a licence, and those found flouting this may render themselves liable for disciplinary action. This is your committee will be aware that each district borough council that licenses such vehicles, there is no one set of criteria throughout the country. I think we each have, or you all set different standards. It has been suggested in some quarters that some drivers will go to a council where it is easier to obtain a licence and then work in another area. Whilst it's not an offence to do that, and it's perfectly within law, providing some other parameters our criteria are complied with, it is, we feel, a question that should be asked for the driver to consider at the time of application.
Any comments or questions? Everybody in favour? Any dissenters? Dissenters? Carried. G.
Yeah, the next section, sir. CCTV probably speaks for itself. We've already discussed that. The consultation is going to seek views that vehicles will be required to have a council-approved system installed by October 2022.
Thank you. We've had some questions and discussions already. I remind people that this is a consultation document only. Are there any comments or questions? Can I assume there are no dissenters? That is carried? Carried.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I had my hand up. I just wanted to ask Mr. Thornton a question, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
It's just with the CCTV, obviously this goes out for consultation and hopefully widely, because it's such a sensitive and very, very important issue, especially because of vulnerable passengers and including children, of course. I just wondered, do any of these licensed hackney carriages have CCTV at the moment? Thank you.
I'm not aware that any of our current drivers have this, although my colleague, Mr. Chairman, Danielle, may well have a different view on that. She's a bit more intimately involved with the trade and probably that question. If I can defer to her, please.
Yeah. Danielle Ball, licensing specialist. Steady on with the intimate bit. Thank you. Yeah, just to confirm that at the moment, the trade have the option of having CCTV in their vehicles if they wish to do so. And I can confirm that, yes, we do have a number of drivers who do have CCTV, but it's probably a relatively small percent. I would suggest it's around 10% of our trade that currently choose to have the CCTV installed.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Through you, just to carry on from that, if there is such a large fear about invasion of privacy and harm that could possibly come to especially passengers in taxis, I can understand the risk that taxi drivers face constantly, and you know, I applaud them for that. But is it right that taxi drivers should have CCTVs in their vehicles at this moment, when we're going to be conducting a consultation as to what is required of CCTV cameras, like what angles of that, who can you capture in it, whether there's sound or anything? I mean, so at the moment, the council, it would seem, has no control over any of these issues that we're asking in this public consultation. And it's just, I just wondered how anybody else feels about that, if anything. Thank you, Chair.
Can I ask our legal advisors to respond, please?
With Michelle Wilkinson, solicitor. With respect to Chair, I think that's probably more appropriate a question for Danielle, as she's more intimate in her knowledge of what's currently happening.
Thank you, Danielle.
Danielle Ball, Specialist Advisor. Again, less of the intimate. Currently, we have CCTV and we have a minimum standard set that we would expect to be installed. We have a couple of installers locally who put the CCTV into the vehicles, and then they become the data controller because they have put the CCTV into the car. What then happens is, if there is an incident that the police require CCTV from the vehicle, or alternatively that the driver requires it, they seek our permission for that CCTV to be downloaded for those purposes.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Everybody in agreement that it should be in the Councillor,
I've just got one thing to ask. Where Danielle has just said that the installer becomes the data controller, how then are you going to be able to have the council to be the data controller if we haven't put in the cameras?
If I could just come back on that one, Chair. If we make it mandatory that all our vehicles have the CCTV in there, that would then make us the data controller. That's what I believe. If I could just get a legal confirmation of that point.
Michelle Wilkinson, solicitor. Yes, that's a distinction. We strongly encourage it at the moment, so that doesn't make us the data controller. But if we insist upon it, it does. So that's the difference.
Thank you. No more questions. Everybody in agreement that it should be in the consultation document? No dissenters? Agreed. Item 8, wheelchair accessibility. Last. Thank you. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, wheelchair accessible vehicles. The condition here to be been added. In fact, it's been updated. The vehicle must always carry the appropriate equipment to transport wheelchair passengers. Otherwise, the vehicle will be suspended immediately. You may well question the need for that. That is what it relates to is. So if you were to put a wheelchair into a vehicle that is wheelchair accessible, there is a defence in under the relevant legislation that a vehicle does not have to carry the wheelchair if there is some equipment missing from the vehicle that would otherwise render the wheelchair unsafe. And having had personal experience of this at a previous authority, this merely seeks to clarify that they should be carrying what, for all intents and purposes, are a couple of straps or a bit of metal that actually secures the vehicle in there. So it actually it takes away the reasoning that someone may have forgotten to place the straps in, and therefore they don't have to place a wheelchair access in the vehicle, which rather renders it useless having a wheelchair accessible vehicle in the first place, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Everybody agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. Carried. Item I, patron livery exemptions.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This just basically updates and clarifies how an application should be made for exemption from displaying door signs and a plate. Generally, this relates to somebody who runs a company, and there are a number within our district for executive hire. So VIPs, etc., who would ordinarily be travelling in a vehicle, sometimes don't like to travel in a vehicle that has signage, and so this drivers can obtain an exemption from displaying the signs and displaying the plate. However, if they do then undertake what I would call normal private hire work, then that is the time when they will be required to put the plate on, and that is a matter then for the judgment of the officers whether the exemption is a matter of convenience or whether it is actually a business plan and a business model.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was quite surprised about that, because I always thought that if you're a hackney carriage, whether you're a limousine that doesn't need door signs, I thought would need to at least have an appropriate plate on the back to make sure that whoever hires that limousine can get identify their number of the licensed vehicle, and I'm surprised that can be exempt from it. But It'd be interesting. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, may I come back on that?
Yes, go ahead.
Councillor Taylor, generally with this type of work, it is, I would say, not generally, it is always clearly pre-booked because it's private hire, clearly pre-booked, and it is not something that, for example, if I were to book a vehicle to take me to the airport or to a railway station early in the morning, I would not expect in the ordinary course of events a vehicle with a plate exemption to turn up. This is for people. A lot of companies use this to collect clients from railway stations, airports, and take them to conferences. And they just simply, some companies just simply don't want their clients to be seen in vehicles with plates on the side. Generally, the types of vehicles you're looking at here are top of the range luxury models vehicles as well.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Everybody agreed it should be in the consultation. No dissenters. Agreed. Item J, dual driver licenses.
Yes, this one relates to just clarifying the length of time, which is 36 months for the issue of a driver's license. There are one or two exceptional circumstances which are just clarified in the policy.
Any questions or comments? Any dissenters for it to be carried? Agreed. Thank you. Are we at item K now?
We're at K now, sir. Yeah. The application renewal process. The wording's been updated in this one, clarified to clarify the need for timely applications. Regrettably, and it may well have been due to the COVID restrictions we've been going through for 9 months now, 10 months now. It's just to instill upon the trade the need to get applications in a timely fashion, and also to to tell them that driver's licenses that go beyond an expiry date, once it's gone beyond that expiry date, the license actually is cancelled, and so it's not a question of coming back to it a couple of weeks later. There's no actually mechanism in law for it to be carried on for a late application. So this is it's basically updating and explaining it a bit clearer.
Any comments or questions? Everybody in agreement? No dissenters? Agreed. Item L, stretch limousines.
Stretch limousines have generally been not included. This is a direct lift from the guidance, from the Department for Transport guidance. Many of you will be aware that with stretch limousines, they're very popular for things such as school proms, etc., etc. And there was because they sometimes can carry more than 8 people, there was a tendency to move away from licensing them because of that, because of the popularity amongst young people. It was felt by the DFT that these should be brought into the licensing regime. There was also a number of issues around them, or thought to be a number of issues around them, in that the origin of some of these vehicles may not have been clear, and I think one of the phrases cut and shut, where they take vehicles and cut them in half and extend them, so I'm told, may well have been taking place, and so adding to the safety. But clearly we have very strenuous or strict inspection regimes now, and so the next part of this is to license the vehicles and license the drivers.
Any questions or comments? Everybody agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. Item M.
Again, I mentioned this in my earlier presentation, members. The fit and proper test never been formally defined in law in relation to taxis, but the authority, what we're suggesting is that the authority formally adopt the DFT guidance relating to the fit and proper test.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? No dissenters? Agreed. Item N.
Disclosure and barring service update. What we are proposing is that all drivers and operators actually subscribed to the update service. It is an online service. I accept that one or two drivers may not claim to know how to work the online service. We do offer, I mean, we are encouraging this and have done for a couple of years. And those that don't, we generally ask them to go and find a mentor within the trade, and this tends to work very well. And it's also bearing in mind that the DBS checks are now going to be every 6 months, or proposed to be every 6 months. It will make it will make the system far more efficient than it could be with having to chase bits of paper.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Everyone agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. Item 0.
This relates to overseas applicants, and really this is self-explanatory. We're seeking criminal records information from overseas where somebody comes into the country wishing to be licensed, and it's a question of making some inquiries of how long they've been out of the country. You know, those of us, those people that are normally resident in the UK will be subject to a DBS, but clearly somebody coming from overseas, what this is saying, they need to be subject to a check from that country.
Any comments or questions? Everybody agreed? Any dissenters? Carried. P.
Again, this is all to do with online checks, and it's a matter of the drivers logging on and obtaining a code from the DVLA, which they have to obtain, and then to give to the licensing team in order that we can check their DVLA record for any updates for endorsements, etc.
Any comments or questions? No dissenters? Agreed.
It's the introduction of English language proficiency test, which I touched upon during the initial presentation. Computer-based test, be a council officer sitting with the applicant, and the test goes through a number of comprehension exercises with the applicant. As I said before, all applicants, so this does not is not a discriminatory test. All applicants, regardless of nationality, will have to sit the test, and exceptions are those who have a qualification in English, which is outlined in the policy guidance.
Any comments or questions? Agreed? No dissent? Agreed. Item R. Thank you.
Item R is a safeguarding awareness training, again underpinning probably everything from the Department of Transport a report initially, and this will be for all new applicants and for all current drivers to be administered or to be run by an external company to be nominated by the council.
Any comments or questions? Everybody agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. S.
Mandatory disability awareness training, ditto for the safeguard awareness training, again run by an external provider, and to be for all new applicants and current drivers as well.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Everybody agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. T.
This updates and clarifies the current process to apply for an exemption certificate from carrying assistance dogs. There are some people who, for whatever reason, perhaps just don't like dogs, and particularly assistance dogs, as members will be aware. If you have an assistance dog, then you are by definition a vulnerable member of society, and this clarifies the people that somebody will have an allergy to a dog. So this clarifies that we will want fairly robust medical evidence before we issue an exemption certificate.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? No dissenters? Agreed. Card payments.
This one, the card payments, is probably something that's come out more by accident than design during the current health crisis that we've got. Cash seems to have rather disappeared in many ways, and so card payments are becoming more and more popular, and particularly within the trade, because it's safer. If drivers aren't carrying cash, then it's safer. They're not less likely to be robbed. And so, but what we're trying to do here is to ensure that if people do have a card, that they're not being charged, in a fee for the card, sometimes more than the fare.
Thank you. Any comments? Yes, Barry. Sorry, Councillor Taylor.
Well, all it is, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased about that because within it as well, it can be of any sum, where sometimes they dictate how much you've got to spend on it, and I really think that's very good to make it so that you can have a card payment even if it's only £1. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There's another hand up. Oh, yes, Councillor Belsey.
I'm pleased with this as well, and there's hardly a taxi drive in Eastbourne that's less than a £5 nowadays. So the only thing I would query is how many, if I can ask through Danielle, how many taxis allow card payments already? Because this could be something else, because obviously there's a cost incurred on having a card payment machine, or you can do it on your phone now, but I'm not that clever. So I just wondered how many are already doing it, if we have an idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Danielle Ball, Licensing Specialist Advisor. I think that the people who work for the private hire companies generally are all set up with company card payment machines. And obviously our private hire trade accounts for about 75% of our licensing trade. The Hackney carriages that work off of the rank that are predominantly independent are less likely to have a card payment machine, and if they do have them, that's when they will incur the additional charges, because it will be a personal one rather than a company one. I do believe that there is a fair amount of those drivers who do have that card payment machine, and I think that's fairly recent due to what's been alluded to in the fact of not many people actually carrying cash anymore. So I would actually suggest that a large percentage of our fleet currently do have card payment machines.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Everybody in agreement? No dissenters? Carried. Agreed. Item V, vaping.
Self-explanatory, Mr. Chairman. Drivers and passengers can't smoke in a car, or drivers can't smoke in a car. This just extends it to vaping.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Belsey. Mute. You're on mute, Councillor Belsey.
I'll say it, flip. Can the officers explain to me the wording on that, does that mean whether if they're parked up and on their break? Because where I live, I often see I see taxis parked up around my area because it's very close to the hospital. And often I see people smoking in their taxis when they're obviously not got anybody in there. What is the definition of vaping and smoking in a licensed vehicle? Is it obviously when they've got a passenger, one wouldn't expect it, but does it mean at all times? I'm just trying to get in my own head exactly the definition.
Go ahead.
You going, Danny?
Yeah, Danielle Ball, licensing specialist. It means at any time that vehicle is a workplace and therefore smoking is not allowed in that vehicle at any time, passenger or not. And if they are found to be smoking in the vehicle, please pass their details on with times, dates and locations, and they will be issued with written warnings or potentially fixed penalty notices.
Thank you.
Is in that case, Chairman, in the actual document that will end up as the new document for Eastbourne Borough Council for licensing, will it clearly state that it is at any time, or will it just state what it's got here? The current condition banning will include vaping, but will it clearly state that in the new document that it is at any time, whether you're stationary, off duty, whatever?
Mr. Chairman, if I can, would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Paul Thornton again. Yeah, Councillor Belsey, it'll be number condition 26 on page 60 of the document. It says the driver shall not smoke or vape in the vehicle. We believe that that is, how should we say, succinct and direct. That I'm not sure that there's any could be too much argument with that by one of the drivers.
Could I ask? Am I on or not? Oh, I am. Yeah. Could I ask, Chairman, that we add the words "at any time" at the end, just to to really make it strong?
I'm happy with that. Everybody else? So with the addition of the word "at any time," everybody happy to agree this item? Any dissenters? Agreed. W.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's noted. W. Criminality checks on vehicle proprietors. Your committee will be aware that to date we do DBS and criminal records checks on our drivers. What the DFT proposal is that it's extended to all those in the licensed trade who are holders of licenses, even though they may not be driving vehicles. And this this section just clarifies that.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Everybody agreed? Any dissenters?
Sorry, Chair, I did have my hand up there.
Sorry, I didn't see.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Thornton. There's a reference to having links with serious criminal activity. I was just wondering why the word "serious" was used rather than, say, for instance, any criminal activity. I mean, is that possible that could be rephrased to include no links to actually any criminal activity whatsoever? Thank you, Chair.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Councillor Max did that. That could be amended. We can take that. We can take the word "serious" out.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? And everybody agreed with the theories taken out. Simply agreed. X now, haven't we?
We are indeed, Mr. Chairman. Licensee self-reporting. This relates to licence holders being required to inform the licensing authority of within 48 hours of an arrest and release, charge or conviction, or any offence involving dishonesty or violence in any motoring offence. And one of the reasons for this is then it gives the licensing authority the opportunity to view and review the nature of the person's arrest or coming to notice of the police, because as you may well be aware that you have the power to suspend and or revoke license once something comes before you in circumstances where offences are deemed to be so serious, then officers have delegated authority to revoke licences, and indeed we have done on 3 occasions recently where serious matters have come to our attention, and this is merely seeking to tighten up the timescale for which people have to report to us.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Maxted.
I'm just worried you couldn't see me there, Chair, but you can. Thank you very much. It's just there was an occasion on a licensing subcommittee where someone someone had a case for fit and proper person, and they had a previous or a few previous offences that they hadn't reported, and I asked, I think it was probably Michelle at the time, should they not have reported this? And this, well, yes, but sometimes they don't. And so I was a little bit disappointed by that, because of course that's the fact. The only reason that this particular taxi driver reported it was because there was another incident, there was another offence, and so of course it all comes out. It all had to come out then, and so in a way, I just felt that there should be some sort of penalty for not reporting within. I mean, this says within 48 hours of an arrest or release or whatever. And this also includes any motoring offence. So presumably, no matter how small. And I just feel that this wording is a little bit unsubstantial. Licence holders should be required to notify. I mean, licence holders must surely notify the issuing authority. And also, I mean, also I was a bit disappointed with the action that the council will decide to take should people not do this. But of course, that's something that can be talked about more in greater detail after the consultation. But I don't know whether that's a valid point or not, Paul, to raise, or whether you feel that the wording is adequate at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Comment, Paul?
Mr. Chairman, no, Councillor Maxter, you make a very good point, and those that know me well, certainly in alcohol licensing, will know that I'm quite pedantic around must, shall, will, and can't. And so, if it was the will of the committee that the wording was changed to must, then that I will leave that to put to your members, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. First, are there any further comments or questions? No. Shall I say, subject to the slight change mentioned by our legal advisor, is everybody happy with this item going ahead? Agreed. Why, I think, is next.
It is sharing licensing information. Again, this just clarifies that applicants and licensees be required to disclose they've had an application for license refused, revoked or suspended by another licensing authority. So that's actually a question of openness and honesty on an application form. And just for your members, Mr. Chairman, I'm no doubt they are aware that officers do have access to a national database where license holders from for other license authorities that have had their licenses revoked are included on that, and we do make checks. But we see this as a matter of honesty, because sometimes the things don't get reported.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Everybody happy that it's agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. Item Z.
Item Z, private hire vehicle operators. Now, this is a new one from the DFT book or guidance, and just a bit of background on it. If somebody phones a private hire operator, says, "Can I have a vehicle, please, to take me from A to B?" The person taking that call is going to be privy to your personal details. If you are vulnerable in any way, they will be aware of your details. And there was some suggestion that certainly in the cases, the rather tragic cases in Rotherham and Rochdale and other places that led to these reports, that there may have been some unscrupulous people working within private hire operators' premises. And so what this is doing is actually seeking to formalise that operators have they require the staff to have DBS checks. And so when myself and Danny go and do an operator's inspection in the future, we will be entitled to say, can we see the details of your staff and their DBS checks, please?
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Maxted.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm glad Paul Thornton added that bit at the end where the authority can have sight of DBS checks. I was a bit worried because on page 38 it says evidence that they have had sight of basic DBS check, the operator, and so I'm pleased to hear that there will be a copy of this DBS check held, if that is the case, held at the offices of the operator. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Everybody agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. We're at item AA.
Yeah, through the first part of the alphabet, Mr. Chairman. So this again relates to private hire vehicle operators. And again, this is a new bit as well, and it's actually asking for the operators and named directors of the company to have DBS checks.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Everybody agree? Yes, Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you, Chair. Will the operators and directors also have the opportunity of signing up to the DBS so that it's cheaper for them rather than having to pay the full cost like the drivers have? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I defer to my colleague Danielle, because she's done a lot of work around the online DBS.
Thank you, Chair. Danielle Ball, Licensing Specialist. Unfortunately, with a basic DBS, the applicant is able to apply for that themselves. So therefore, it wouldn't be done via the organisation, which is what we do for all of our licensed drivers. We have to do an enhanced DBS check, which allows them to then sign up for an online service. If they are applying for a one-off their own personal license, that would not be able to be done. But the basic DBSs are a lower price than the enhanced DBSs that we would be requiring every 6 months for our licensed drivers.
AA says that the operators who do not already supply an enhanced DBS certificate to the council. Oh, get a basic. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Happy? Any further comments or questions? Everybody agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. I think we're at B now. Thank you.
That's it. And this is another one which has just been enhanced from the DFT guidance. In that there's some onus now on the operators who to inform the licensing authority when their drivers are subject of a complaint regarding the safeguarding dishonesty, abusing customers, or if they've had 2 complaints within 12 months, because a lot of time people won't phone the licensing authority, they'll phone the company that provided the driver. So this is actually placing an onus on the company to let the licensing authority know of a complaint about the drivers.
Any comments, questions? Everybody agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. CC, isn't it next?
It is. Operator records. The current conditions have half a dozen requirements for we expect operators to have in their records of bookings. The new guidance from the DFT actually enhances that and just asks operators to have some more detail about the journey, including the name of the person making the booking, pickup points, destinations, name of the driver license number. So it's just enhancing what is currently provided.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Agreed. No dissenters. Thank you. Agreed. And DD.
This relates to public service vehicles. So somebody like a driver of South Downs Express bus wants to drive a minibus and can be quite lawfully hired by a private hire operator to do so. They don't actually go through the same licensing requirements with the local authority, and so this is actually allowing the customer to make that consent with the company that they're happy for that man or woman to drive that vehicle, knowing that they are a public service vehicle license and not the holder of a private hire or Hackney carriage vehicle license.
Questions, comments? Agreed. No dissenters? Agreed. Getting lost. FF, is it?
No, we're on E now, sir. EE, convictions policy, and this is a reasonably lengthy document. But as I alluded to in my introduction, this is far more robust and comprehensive than the current guidance, and it gives, in our view, it gives far clearer guidance both to the officers and clearer guidance to you as a licensing committee for your determinations.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Agreed. No dissenters? Agreed. Continue, Paul.
Right, FF, which is common law disclosure and referrals to the police and the DBS. Again, as I alluded to, we will maintain very close links with the police. The police have now appointed a liaison officer. He's the licensing officer who deals with alcohol licenses. So he has been specifically nominated to deal with taxi liaison. We are in discussion with East Sussex County Council, and we've got a meeting in 3 weeks' time with both of those bodies where we will share information, and it also provides easily definable points of contact for all organisations.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Agreed. No dissenters? Agreed.
Mr. Chairman, there is one more, the penalty points scheme, which I spectacularly advised you before that I left out. We've discussed it through the through this. It's actually come up a couple of times, and unless anybody's got any questions about that, I think it's probably self-explanatory.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Maxted.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to just to comment on this list of these offences. Is it, and obviously I accept the fact this is early days and it's a work in progress. Is it possible to group them in like appropriate groups? Whether it's to do with severity or whether it's to do with like vehicle offences or behavioural offences or whatever. Is that something that you might look at rather than a list of not random but not necessarily linked offences, and then obviously some of them would be more severe or have more severe penalties than others, and might even help with officers deciding on whether they should what sort of level of action they should take. But I do appreciate it's a work in progress, but just for ease of reference, maybe. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to comment, Paul?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Maxted, I entirely take on board your points, because somebody looking at this for the first time will look at 60 bits of information, and it can be very confusing. We will. I'll take this away, and I'll get Danny to group them all.
Comment, questions? Are you going to comment? No. Any comments?
Chairman, I have got
Councillor Belsey.
Number 30 just says evidence of smoking in a vehicle. It doesn't say smoking or vaping.
Yep.
Comment?
Because it was changed. I'm just pointing there.
Point taken. I can. I'll change that, sir.
Right, no more questions. Everybody agreed adding vaping, and we're going to get some list. Everybody agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. Where are we now?
I do believe that's it, Mr. Chairman. That's we got to the end of that.
We got to the end of that, so I've got to ask the committee, do you agree to the amended Eastbourne Borough Council Hackney Carriage and Private Hire licensing guidance as discussed? Everybody in agreement?
No, not necessarily. Can I speak, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
All it was during the debate generally, there was some concern about how quick or short the consultation period would be. Is there any harm in making it 12 weeks rather than 6 weeks?
That is coming up separately in a second.
I'm sorry. I apologise, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want it to slip away. Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment? Everybody agreed, no dissenters? Yes, agreed. Do you agree that the results of the consultation be reported to a subsequent meeting of the licensing committee unless only minor changes are proposed as a result of the consultation responses, in which case any changes may be made by the functional lead quality environment in consultation with the chair of the licensing committee? Councillor Belsey?
Personally, Chairman, I'd like to see it come back to committee anyway. I think this is a big item, and it's going to be on the statute books for some years for the future. And I really do believe that, and to be fair to the taxi drivers, I think we need to have this put in front of us at a later date when it's had its consultation period and the officers have looked at it, and then we can make the recommendations, if any, that need to be altered. But I really do believe it needs to come back to a full meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to see each other. You never know, do you? So I do believe that it needs a full meeting rather than it can be sorted out without a meeting. And I'll move that if you like, Chairman. I'll move that.
Second. I'd like to second it.
We have a proposal and a seconder that the consultation report should come back to this committee, whatever. Are you quite happy for it to go straight to a vote? I call members out. Those in favour of it coming back to committee, Councillor Maxted.
For.
Belsey.
For.
Chowdhury not here. Councillor De Cara.
For.
Councillor Diplock.
For.
Morris. Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Murdoch not here. Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Wansborough.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Vaughan.
For.
I think I'll be for as well, Councillor Rotherham. Procedurally, that now becomes the motion. Everybody has got to, everybody agreed it should go through as a substantive motion. No dissenters. Thank you for that. I think I may have misled the committee. Where am I did see somewhere the length of being 6 weeks. And there's a feeling that it should be longer. I'm trying to find it among all the paperwork I have.
Chair, if I may say, it's the officer recommendation number 2.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Officer recommendation number 2 is that this consultation should be for 6 weeks. Everybody happy with that, or have we got a proposal?
Mr. Chairman, can I propose that we make it 12 weeks?
Right, that's an amendment. Have you got a seconder for 12 weeks?
I'll second that, Chairman.
Councillor Swansborough and Councillor Vaughan. I don't know which hand we'd up first, but you want to speak. Well, Councillor Swansborough first. Are you speaking, Councillor Swansborough? If you are, you're muted.
I'm not speaking, no, thank you.
You're taking your hand down.
I haven't put my hand up yet.
Well, yeah, it's not.
It is up. Councillor Vaughan, is your hand up? Councillor Vaughan?
Yeah, I was thinking 12 weeks is quite a long time, seeing as they've already had this information for 3 months. I would probably think down the middle of that, 8 weeks would probably be enough. I don't know what the others think of it, but if they've already had all this information given to them in October, then another 12 weeks on top of that is it's taken us to March.
Yes, that's my view. So are you putting forward an alternative?
8 weeks, you said 8.
Yes, I propose 8 weeks rather than 12.
I'll second that.
Do you have seconder?
I'll second that. I'll second 8 weeks. Councillor Morris, I'll second it.
Okay, Councillor Morris, thank you.
Second it. You already got one.
Councillor Maxted, do you want to speak?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. It's obviously not. It's not just consultation for taxi drivers or operators. There's a list of the consultees. Well, not comprehensive, presumably, but to include a variety of people and variety of bodies throughout the county. And I was just wondering whether Mr. Thornton could let us know what he feels is a reasonable consultation period, taking into account the amount of work that he and his department are going to have to do in consulting people, and then putting together a presentation to feed back to the committee when we meet again. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Maxted. 6 weeks is the we've consulted in 6 weeks before. There's and I do understand the feeling within the committee, and this is a complex issue. It's a long document. I think the history behind this is that generally people will make a representation, make a submission within the first 3 or 4 weeks, and beyond that, look, it's entirely your decision. But 12 weeks is a very, very long time, and it's unusual for a consultation to go on for that length of time. In answer to your, but again, it's not. If that's your decision, then that's we will collate all the responses during that time. We've done a lot of work with the council's communications team already, because Lewis Lewis's committee have their consultation is due to start next week. We would likely, more than likely, to run both of them in conjunction with each other. If one runs on longer than the other, that absolutely is not an issue. We've already drawn up our draft questions on what we call the Survey Monkey. I don't know if the members are familiar with that. It's an online form, so it asks. I think we've got six of what we would call the prominent questions so far, and then there's a generalised question for the rest of the document. So what we do with these things is to liaise with the communications team every week and see and look at the results coming in, and then start to formulate documents. We generally get a feel of what the issues are going to be. So I'm not sure if that entirely answers your question, Councillor Maxted, but as I say, I've just made a couple of notes here of 12 weeks. If you did that, that means the final date will be the 10th of April, and 8 weeks is the 20th of March. And I must confess, Michelle may be able to help me about the dates of your next committee meetings, because clearly the longer it goes, then it pushes back a decision for implementation.
Was it Daniel or Michelle that was going to comment on the time of meetings?
Through you, Chair. Michelle Wilkinson. While we set the dates of the licensing committee, they're easily changed to a date that suits when the report needs to come back. So I don't think it's particularly significant what the set dates are. They can be moved. Like Paul, I think 6 weeks is a standard. If members chose to do 8, or if you choose to do 12, that's entirely in your remit. I don't think you need to worry too much about the timing of the licensing committee. Those are set, but they can be changed to suit when reports are coming.
I've got 2 hands up. I didn't notice who came first. It's Councillor Taylor and Councillor Belsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't think that 12 weeks was too bad. It's only 3 months. We're in a lockdown situation at the present moment, and we're in slight turmoil. It's not just the norm, and I think it's not unfair, especially as there was criticism about the fact that this has all been rushed onto everybody. And I think we're answering those problems. Anybody turns around and said, well, we haven't had a chance to do this, or it's all been suddenly thrust upon us. I think 12 weeks or 3 months is no problem. Hopefully we'll be starting to get out of category 4 lockdown, and we can be slightly more. So I know somebody said, well, let's split it in half and go to 8 weeks. Why? It's only 3 months. I don't think 12 weeks is any problem at all. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chairman. I like Councillor Taylor. I think that 12 weeks is not a problem, but I'm quite happy to go with Councillor Vaughan's suggestion that we go to 8, because I don't think we need to argue over too much over how many weeks. But I do think it needs longer than 6, and that's basically my position. And I won't move from that, but I'm quite happy to drop my 12 weeks and go for 8 weeks.
Thank you. My feeling is that 12 weeks is too long. The longer the time lag is, the more likely it'll sit in somebody's office or in the office drawer, and then suddenly they will realise that it's now 13 weeks and they're too late. If I read it correctly, Councillor Belsey, seconded Councillor Taylor, and for 12 weeks, and that's now been withdrawn. Am I correct on that?
We haven't withdrawn it. I haven't withdrawn anything.
Okay, but a second. I haven't got a seconder anymore.
I moved that we go for 12 weeks. Put it to the vote. So I want a named vote, if you like.
Oh,
I'd
no,
like to
silly.
Oh,
To a vote if I have a seconder.
You can now. I'll second it still. We go to the vote. Okay, I'll second it still.
yeah. And a named vote, please.
Thank you. I need some guidance procedurally on this one. I think we would take the two amendments in the vote and then have the winner against the proposition. Is that correct procedurally?
Right.
Chair, Emily Horn speaking, committee officer. You've obviously had the first proposal from Councillor Taylor for 12 weeks. Councillor Belsey has seconded it. So that was the first suggestion put forward. I would suggest members do a named vote for that proposal first for 12 weeks and then move on to the 8 weeks if that's lost. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to do a roll call for or against a lead time of 12 weeks. Vice Chair Councillor Maxted.
Against, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Belsey.
For, Chair, as I did second it.
Councillor DeCara.
For.
Councillor Diplock.
Against.
Councillor Morris.
Against.
Councillor Murray.
Against.
Councillor Swansborough.
Against.
Councillor Taylor.
For. I'll just named vote.
Yes, I'm picking them. Councillor Vaughan.
Against.
And myself, I'm against. So I have it that for the amendment was Councillor Belsey, Councillor DeCara, and Councillor Taylor, and against was Councillor Maxted, Councillor Diplock, Councillor Murray, Swansborough, Vaughan, and Rotherham.
Chair, Emily Horn, committee officer speaking. If I could just confirm that vote, you had 7 members against the proposal for 12 weeks and 3 members for the proposal for 12 weeks. So that particular motion was lost for 12 weeks.
And it's recorded.
And yes, certainly it is recorded, named vote recorded for you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We're left now with proposal amendment for 8 weeks and a proposal for 6 weeks. Do we take the next amendment? I guess we do. All those in favour of amending it to 8 weeks. Councillor Maxted.
For, Chair.
Councillor Belsey. For. Can't hear you.
For.
Thank you. Councillor DeCara.
For.
Councillor Diplock.
For.
Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Swansborough.
For.
Councillor Taylor?
I'm against, and it's a recorded vote, I hope.
It wasn't asked for.
I'm asking for it now.
I judge you're too late.
It's too late now, Barry.
Councillor Vaughan?
4.
And myself, 4. It's carried. The committee officer will confirm that.
Yes, Chair, Emily Horn, committee officer speaking. I can confirm that we have 9 votes for 8-week consultation and 1 against. Thank you.
So at this point, that becomes substantive and it's carried, isn't it?
Yes, Chair, I can confirm.
Thank you. So the consultation will be 8 weeks. I think we've come to the end of this item. Is that correct, Emily?
Yes, Chair, the item is now concluded. The members have voted on the 3 recommendations. So if you wish to move on to agenda item 9, and that's page 131 of your agenda. Thank you.
It's been a bit of a marathon. Thank you for all the councillors and advisors, and especially Paul. The next item shouldn't be long, but I think I should ask, do any members want a break at this time? Or are you happy to continue to the next item? People are happy to continue. Can I ask, sorry. Can I invite Ed Heal, Functioning Lead, Quality Environment, to present item 9, licensing fees report?
Yes, good evening, Chair. Good evening, councillors, and thank you for having me. My name is Ed Heal. I'm the Functional Lead for Quality Environment. The report I'm bringing you today is to approve a scale of licensing fees proposed within Appendix 1 to apply from the 1st of April this year. And the recommendations of myself is to approve the scale of fees as set out, and that the licensing committee recommends to full council that it formally ratifies those fees. Licensing fees should be set by the licensing committee and then ratified by full council. We'll come on to table 2.2 in a moment. The current financial year obviously has been extremely challenging, as we all know, following a nationwide lockdown in response to the virus pandemic. And at the time of preparing this paper, I wasn't sure that we'd be going into a lockdown 3.0, but we have. Not only has it impacted many businesses adversely, but it's also had an impact upon the service that we offer as a council. Issues were experienced with hackney carriage and private hire trade with regards to access to MOTs, and obviously we had to deal with that. Vehicle suitability tests and drivers' medicals were all affected due to the pandemic. The majority of the services have subsequently restarted, but it is taking some time to collect the fees as a result of the suspension in these activities. The financial overview of the authority is displayed at 2.2, whereby you can see the various budgeted income estimates for this year. Now, obviously, this was a budgeted estimate based at the beginning of the year and not when we were going into a pandemic. So the figures that we've used for this were based upon last financial year. And so you'll have to bear with me as we go through it. The committee are reminded that the taxi service operates on a self-financing year-by-year basis, and street trading and scrap metal also operate on that basis as well. So the council has got the discretion to set its own fees for these on a cost recovery basis. In the event any of these fees, both estimates, prove to be too wide of the mark, the revised fees can be calculated in order to comply with the legal requirements. Now, when I put together these figures, we are using figures from the financial year of 1920. We've had a significant difficulty this year in terms of the fees, and as was mentioned earlier, I think we've had a handful of drivers that have decided to surrender their licences. Similarly, we've also had impact upon various gambling outlets within the town. and also some licensing establishments as well. You will note that since 2017, the income received for taxi private hire licensing has risen, and we have been able to run that service more efficiently. And this has generated a year-on-year surplus at the end of last year of 52,924. It's one of the more significant amounts of money that we have in surplus for the service. We obviously are taking measures to deal with that. One thing that we did was to provide vehicle proprietors with a 50% reduction on their vehicle licence fee. The reason for choosing that one is it is a yearly licence fee as opposed to a 3-year or 5-year fee, and therefore through the period of the year all the vehicle proprietors would receive a reduction to assist them in these hard times. In addition, as reducing those fees, a number of measures are now being taken to address the surplus. So in effect, what we are doing is increasing the costs that it costs the council to run the service, which would include additional staff to undertake taxi and private hire enforcement, additional training for existing staff, an increase in the vehicle inspections, and we're proposing IT improvements to the licensing system. It is anticipated that with an increased cost of running the service, the surplus will be reduced. There is a Court of Appeal decision since we discussed fees last time that's determined that fees for the different licences should be used specifically for that purpose. The existing surplus has been collected across all licence types and it's necessary to distribute these. So the reason for bringing this piece of case law to your attention is the case law now defines that we should be separating out the income and expenditure for drivers, vehicles and operators. And that is what we have done in terms of setting aside different budget codes for that purpose from the 1st of April this year, and then retrospectively applying the surplus into those budget codes as described. And future fees and charge reports will report on these areas separately in the future. As I mentioned, the number of gambling licences unfortunately has reduced, resulting in lower income receipts. The table above that you see at 0.2.2 also covers the statutory fees which are set by central government, that's the Licensing Act. Members will see from Appendix 1 the proposed fees for 21-22. On the whole, there is no significant changes in those fees. There is a small increase in street trading and a new fee of a market operator. We didn't previously have market operators specifically set out, so we're wanting to put that in, and that would be for a yearly fee as a market operator. We are looking at resolving the very large number of different types of private hire operator licences and reducing those to a smaller number to make it easier for the operators and ourselves to be able to work with. Obviously, if the committee are minded, following the consultation for the child sexual exploitation and safeguarding test, that will be a price to be determined because we don't know the exact price at the moment. All the other fees are not significantly changing, if at all, but that's the end of those. In terms of the legal implications, you've seen the report which details those. Risk management implications, the council does not have any effective fee setting process that's subject to proper oversight by the councillors, then it will not be able to demonstrate that it has adequate means to safeguard council assets and services. It's not expected that the proposals as laid out in the fees report will impact on protected characteristics, and there's no significant sustainability implications as a result of this report. That is my report, Chair, and I hand back to yourself.
Thank you very much. Can I open up to councillors? Do you have any comments or questions? Councillor Maxted.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering whether Mr. Heel could clear up the point that's been raised in this letter from Jeff DeFalco at 720 Taxes regarding the money it costs. I may. That's why I'm asking you, because I might not have understood it properly. The money that is spent on enforcement, he seems to suggest that licence fee payers have wrongly been paying for this cost of enforcement for years. I don't know whether I've understood that right. So maybe, Ed, if you could put me straight on that. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Massey. Obviously, that letter is not subject to this report. I'm happy to have a discussion outside the meeting with councillors to go through that in more detail. But my opinions do differ from that you've seen, in that the enforcement costs are part of this regime following the case law which is mentioned in the report.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Can I ask for a proposer and a seconder to move the recommendations in the report to approve the scale of licensing fees proposed within Appendix 1 to apply from 1st of April 21, and that the licensing committee recommends to full council that it formally ratifies the fees.
Happy to move, Chair.
Second, Councillor Bowes.
I'll second it.
I saw Councillor Maxted's flashing first.
Oh, it's okay. Whatever. I'm easy.
Sorry. Everybody agreed? No dissenters? Agreed. The date of the next meeting is scheduled, that may change, to be commenced at 6 o'clock on Monday the 8th of March 2021. It will take place in a virtual capacity via Microsoft Teams in accordance with Section 78 of the Coronavirus Act 2020, and it continues. The next meeting is on Monday the 8th of March. This is the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you for your attendance. It's been a long meeting, but we got through a lot of work tonight. As a thank you to the officers and a thank you to councillors, and good night.